And speaking of the World Cup, US President Donald Trump has threatened to remove games from Boston because he believes the city is unsafe and run by the radical left. For more on this, we're joined by Kaveh Solokul. Kaveh, what is going on here?
Well, look, the World Cup is being held next summer in USA, Canada, Mexico. 16 host cities, 11 of them are in the US. Donald Trump has so far threatened to take games away from Seattle because he doesn't like the way Seattle is run. He's threatened to take games away from San Francisco because he doesn't like the way San Francisco is being run. And now he's threatened to take games away from Boston. Again, he doesn't like the way Boston is being run. Why not? Because these cities are run by his political opponents. And he's saying they're not safe, there are problems on the streets. For instance, in Boston, there have been some so-called street takeovers, which have led to some police officers being attacked.
We could take them away. I love the people of Boston. I know the games are sold out. But your mayor is not good. They're worse than her. At least she's intelligent. You know, some are extremely low IQ. Those bother me more. She's intelligent, but she's radical left. And they're taking over parts of Boston. That's a pretty big statement, right? We could get them back in about 2 seconds. No, I think she is hurting Boston. The answer is yes. If somebody is doing a bad job, and if I feel there's unsafe conditions, I would call Johnny, the head of FIFA, who's phenomenal, and I would say, let's move it to another location. And he would do that. He wouldn't love to do it, but he'd do it. Very easily he'd do it. And this is the right time to do it. If I thought Boston was doing something that was going to cause safety conditions for the World Cup, I could say the same thing for the Olympics.
Donald Trump has done it again. He's threatening to move 2026 World Cup matches, this time targeting Boston, calling it unsafe. That's not just campaign rhetoric. It's a direct challenge to FIFA's authority on U.S. soil. When a president says he can lift the phone and tell FIFA where games can or can't be played, that's not leadership, it's control theater. What makes this more striking is FIFA's soft response. They've gone vague, saying safety is a government responsibility, which sounds like surrender, dressed up as diplomacy. The World Cup is supposed to be football's grand stage, not a battlefield for political ego. You'd think FIFA would draw a line, but instead, we're watching an organization bend, trying not to offend the very government that could jeopardize its biggest ever tournament. The deeper story here isn't just Trump's blustered, it's FIFA's shrinking leverage, and Canada and Mexico's quiet opportunity to rise as the true leaders of 2026. Thank you for being here with us at Canada Connect. If you're enjoying the work we do, hit subscribe and stay with us. This conversation about who really controls the World Cup is one that's only becoming more important. Trump's power play versus FIFA's authority. So, let's start with what Trump actually said. At the White House, he declared that if he thought a city was unsafe, he'd just call Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, and move the matches elsewhere. He said Infantino wouldn't love it, but he'd do it very easily. That line tells you everything about how Trump sees power: transactional, personal, and absolute. FIFA confirmed to Sky News that safety decisions ultimately fall to governments, not to the federation itself. In one statement, FIFA acknowledged that public safety is the government's responsibility. That declaration, intended to sound cooperative, blurred the line between host authority and tournament independence. It effectively meant Trump was at least on paper. And suddenly, FIFA looked more like a tenant than an owner on U.S. turf. The problem for FIFA isn't just optics. It's structural. The organization's longtime alliance with Infantino, who's repeatedly met Trump at summits and photo ops, now looks more like a liability than diplomacy. When FIFA was dealing with authoritarian governments, they could hide behind agreements. Strongmen would at least pretend to respect the choreography. The United States is different. The world's most powerful office doesn't need to mask authority, can simply dictate it. Trump's framing of unsafe Democrat-run cities drags global sports straight into domestic politics. It's not about crime numbers. It's about narrative. He's turning a multinational tournament into a talking point for internal U.S. politics. Meanwhile, FIFA's 11 American host cities, each with multi-million-dollar sponsorships and broadcast contracts, are left wondering whether one speech could void years of planning. If he follows through, moving games isn't just disorderly, it risks breaching international agreements and derailing sponsorship logistics that hinge on city-specific deals. Broadcasters plan their entire live coverage around those venues. Change the map, and you change the contracts. FIFA can't openly confront Washington, not when 78 of the 104 World Cup matches, including the final, are set to be played in the U.S. But by choosing silence, they've surrendered more than control. They've surrendered the illusion of independence. And that's when the real crisis starts. The legal, political, and reputational crisis. FIFA now faces three overlapping crises: legal, political, and reputational. Each one makes the other worse. The legal side is straightforward but catastrophic. Venue contracts for the World Cup aren't symbolic. They're legal commitments tied to sponsorship revenue, insurance clauses, and logistical obligations. A presidential order declaring a city unsafe could force compliance with domestic law enforcement protocols that override FIFA's own event structure. That would be considered breach of contract under international event law. Every broadcast partner, from Fox to Telemundo, has clauses guaranteeing location stability. A sudden venue change would open the door for lawsuits, not only between FIFA and local governments, but among global sponsors who paid for regional activation rights they might never use. On the political front, FIFA's entire business model depends on perceived neutrality. In Russia, in Qatar, criticized as they were, FIFA and government spoke with one voice once the tournament began. The optics of harmony mattered more than the policies themselves. In the U.S., harmony is impossible. Trump's rhetoric blurs that neutral posture. When he labels certain cities too dangerous, it feeds headlines that make the organization appear subordinate to political whim. The world sees a federation that can't manage its own house. And that perception damages more than branding. It undermines FIFA's central claim to global governance. The reputational crisis, however, may be the hardest to fix. This is happening after years of FIFA promising transformation, cleaner governance, inclusivity, and balance. They built the 2026 bid around the idea of unity across borders, branding it United 2026. Instead, the public sees division. Trump's assertion that he could simply call Gianni unravels that message in one soundbite. It confirms the fear that FIFA's independence isn't independence at all, but proximity. The closer you are to power, the safer your influence. And for global fans, that destroys trust. Meanwhile, the White House isn't slowing down. The administration has already launched a $500 million drone security program to protect U.S. airspace during World Cup matches. On paper, that's about safety, but to FIFA, it's a sign of micromanagement. When national forces start policing stadium airspace, FIFA's traditional control over event operations fades. The very structures that once shielded them, cooperation agreements, safety protocols, designated authority zones, are now being subsumed under federal oversight. It's not sabotage, it's jurisdictional dominance. And FIFA isn't built to push back. This is an organization comfortable managing television schedules, not presidential politics. Its bureaucracy thrives on fixed frameworks. When you insert volatile politics into those systems, paralysis follows. Internally, Infantino's leadership faces a dilemma: defend FIFA's authority and risk U.S. retaliation, or comply quietly and risk humiliation. For sponsors and broadcasters, this limbo looks unstable. Marketing teams don't invest billions into chaos. They need assurances that their branding won't appear next to controversy. The viewers watching this unfold interpret Trump's stance not as a policy debate, but as proof that FIFA doesn't have the final word. And perception drives reality. Each time Trump questions a host city's safety, fans worldwide recalibrate their trust in the event's stability. That's why confidence in the American portion of the tournament has started to erode. Internally, FIFA planners have begun modeling contingency scenarios, where matches could shift to co-host nations with fewer political risks. They call these adjustments logistical, but the motive is reputational triage. Think about how bizarre this dynamic is. The world's most powerful sports organization, accustomed to shaping governments and economies, is now bending to a single politician's comment. It's the clearest example yet of what happens when global sport collides with domestic instability. Football is supposed to transcend politics. Instead, it's orbiting it. That perception is damaging on an international level. By allowing Trump's narrative to define safety discussions, FIFA has effectively admitted it can't guarantee a neutral tournament environment. And that opens the door for comparisons, because now people are looking north and south, noticing that Canada and Mexico don't have these problems. No threats, no rhetoric, no internal war over what's safe. They're just preparing to host. For FIFA's executives, those countries suddenly look like havens of calm. And that's the beginning of the quiet shift that could redefine where the real power of 2026 lies. Canada and Mexico. The new stability narrative. When you contrast all that U.S. turbulence with what's happening in Canada and Mexico, it feels like two different planets. While FIFA scrambles to interpret political signals in Washington, its co-hosts are quietly doing what host nations are supposed to do: prepare. No fights with mayors, no public threats to move games. No second-guessing about whether fans or players can even enter the country. Where the U.S. landscape looks increasingly erratic, Canada and Mexico are keeping the message simple. The world is welcome here. Canada, for example, has streamlined entry policies for World Cup attendees. Ticket holders can expect smoother visa processing, and many nations don't need one at all. The government has committed to clear, predictable travel rules that stay consistent regardless of political cycle. That reliability isn't just bureaucratic, it's good business. Canadian economists project $3.8 billion in output and more than 20,000 jobs tied directly to the tournament. Every minister, airport, and local official is operating off a unified checklist instead of rhetorical guesswork. The subtext is obvious. This is a country presenting itself as what the World Cup was meant to symbolize: open doors and quiet confidence. Mexico's story is similar. Its major cities, Monterrey, Guadalajara, Mexico City, already have the infrastructure, transport links, and municipal coordination that FIFA requires. Organizers there talk about logistics, not ideology. Local governments cooperate with FIFA rather than trying to lecture it. And despite its own domestic security issues, Mexico's planning reports rate consistently higher in predictability than several U.S. venues where federal and state authorities still disagree on policing limits. The message to sponsors is clear. The games will happen here, and the stands will be full. That contrast has started to shape FIFA's internal narrative, a subtle realignment that few will admit publicly. The organization can't announce that it's losing confidence in the United States. But operationally, it's treating Canada and Mexico as contingency zones. Meetings labeled as logistical refinements are quietly assessing how many group stage or broadcast-friendly matches could be moved without breaching contracts. Instead of political retreat, FIFA frames it as optimization, adapting schedules for weather, television timing, or crowd safety. Everyone understands what's really happening. The Federation is building reliability insurance. The optics couldn't be more ironic. While Trump tells the world that some American cities are unsafe, Canada is marketing festivals, fan zones, and tourism packages around the idea that all guests are safe. One president's warning has become another country's advertisement. Its geopolitical judo-letting instability next door make you look steadier without saying a word. Mexico plays the same balance, promoting its hospitality industry as tested and inclusive. For FIFA, these narratives matter as much as police patrols. Each reassuring headline, north or south, buys back a little of the trust being lost in the middle. In the end, control isn't seized. It migrates. Every logistical approval signed in Vancouver or Monterrey. Every visa issued without controversy shifts perception of who's really hosting this World Cup. The large stadiums may still sit in the US, but the tournament's aura of stability, the thing advertisers and fans actually depend on NIS gravitating toward Canada and Mexico. They didn't win that by force. They won it by staying out of drama. Conclusion. The 2026 World Cup is turning into a mirror. On one side is power Washington politics testing FIFA's limits. On the other is composure Canada and Mexico, quietly proving that stability still matters more than swagger. For all the speeches about safety and authority, what we're watching is football reminding governments that global sport lives or dies on reliability. The Federation can talk unity all it wants, but the cities that stay calm will decide who truly hosts the world. So, what do you think? Should FIFA keep pretending the map is fixed, or start shifting matches north before chaos forces its hand? Drop your thoughts below. I'll pin the sharpest take. And if you want more breakdowns where politics collide with sport, hit subscribe and watch the next video on how Canada's.com is reshaping the entire 2026 picture.